Right, hi everyone again. So quick one on this one. So Lucas M3 starter, fairly common standard starter motor, sort of central body. But what's unique to the Fury is the end mounting plate and also the planetary gear housing at this end, which goes into the chain case. This one's been rebuilt because I've got quite a few parts, but the planetary gearbox is very scarce. However, it's not responding to electrical test, so I'm going to take it apart again and have a look and see what's going on inside. So first of all, we'll take off the gearbox end. Okay, there we are. Starter in pieces. Commutators nice and clean. Loads of meat on the brushes, all clean internals. There's the planetary gear. Looks a bit mucky, but it's quite well greased up, so that's fine. It comes out of the where is it? Housing here. All looks pretty good, really. So what I'll do is put it back together, put this back inside the housing into the brushes, which is a bit of a pain of a job. We'll put the two end caps on without the planetary gearbox and the planetary gears, and we'll see if we can fire the starter up, but it does look very clean inside, so it shouldn't be a problem. Okay everyone, a few days later now, but what I've done is I've got the rotor back inside the coils, as you see, quite successfully, and inside the brushes, the commutator inside the brushes. I haven't put the end caps on yet because I thought we'd do a bit of testing here and try a bit of physics, try and remember. So what I've got here is a good brand new battery that is that I purchased for the A70 Lightning, actually, but it is the at the same rating and is the same specifications, that's the word I'm looking for, as the PUZ5A unit that Lucas originally made, which is common to both the A70 Lightning and to the Fury, including the Fury with the starter motor option. And you'd think, looking at it, that you know, the battery might not be meaty enough really to turn the starter that well, because it's quite a hefty heavy starter. And thinking back to my youth and studying physics for A-level, then I had a bit of a think about this, because originally I was just trying to do a test with, you know, a couple of small electrical wires. Apologies, a bit of a break there. The phone stand fell over. So yes, going back to this and doing a bit of testing with small standard electrical wires. The battery is fully charged, and whichever way you go about it, there's no reaction from the starter, even though we know from the test bulb, as you can see, that we're getting a circuit. So I was thinking back to the physics days, and also the fact that these starter motors are intended to have some proper, you know, thick copper connections. And previously I'd secured some starter motor bits and pieces before we understood how we were going to actually connect the starter to the main drive on this motor, because the original Sprag clutches were really never made in any quantity. And I bought some bits and pieces off eBay with a view to adapting a Sprag clutch off a Honda, but what came with it were the proper heavy-duty electrical leads to connect the starter, and this is what I've got here. Also, what I've purchased in the past as well are a couple of solenoids, starter solenoids, and looking into some information online. I don't know whether these starter solenoids are Lucas, but they look exactly like those that are meant to drive this Lucas starter, main starter body. So thinking back to physics then, what I thought about was the fact that starter motors to solenoid to battery use these thick leads because they need, I think, more current. And current is I equals V over R. So we know the voltage is going to be the same. So that means then that if we reduce the resistance, then we're going to get a higher amperage. And I think that's what happens with respect to these thicker wires. So what I did then was I consulted, having got these parts, these wires and the solenoid out of stock, I then consulted the Fury handbook, because it has got a wiring diagram in here, and these handbooks are like gold dust. But there is, you're not going to be able to see this very well, I don't think. There is a wiring diagram in here, and it does include the components for electric start, which is fairly simple. So I've wired it up, the solenoid up, as per the wiring diagram. So essentially what we've got is we've got the solenoid on the negative side of the battery, because remember the bike runs positive earth. So what I'll do then is negative from the battery goes to the solenoid, solenoid goes to the feed side of the starter, because the starter will be earthed on the positive side. So if we just connect that up, make sure the connection's nice and tight. And the next thing to do is, obviously you'd think that with respect to the, oh, that's what we've got to do as well, sorry, got to take this off for a minute. We'll connect a thick lead onto the earth side, the positive side of the battery. Like so. And then what we've got then is we've got the starter motor wired up to the negative side of the battery via the solenoid, and then we've got the positive lead, longer lead on this side. Now if I just connect that positive lead as an earth to the starter, nothing happens because we've got to activate the solenoid. So the starter button on the handlebars sends a live feed to the solenoid to trip the solenoid switch, which then activates this higher amperage circuit. So what we have to do to mimic that is there's a switch terminal in the center of the solenoid, and that needs to be wired to the live side of the battery, which in this case is negative. I think that's correct. Soon find out. Like so, and as that's a permanent connection without a switch, that should have now activated the solenoid. So if we then touch the earth onto the starter, we get nothing. I've probably connected maybe the wrong lead there. Let's have a think. I'm sure that's correct, unless it's the other side. Let's have a think about this. That can't be right, surely. Right, we're doing something fundamentally wrong here. Unless I've got it wired the wrong way round. Let's just turn the starter a minute. Nope, that's not right. We know the battery's good. Right, I'll have to have a think about this. Unless we've damaged the solenoid somehow. And it's not switching. That's not right. It's got to be this one. It has to be. Oh, here we go. Got it. I was using the wrong terminal. Right, there we go. Basically, if I make that the live side, then we get sparks, big sparks, and there we go, it runs. Still not quite sure about that wiring really, whether that's quite the right way round. Let's just have another look in the book. That to me is the wrong way round, but it's obviously working. For some reason I think that seems to be bypassing the solenoid, but it can't be, because we wouldn't get all that current going through. Yeah, so actually from the starter button on the handlebars, that goes to the same side as the negative side of the solenoid. So that's correct. Okay, so I'm obviously on the wrong wavelength when it comes to wiring up solenoids, but on the right wavelength when it comes to I equals V over R, because obviously we're generating more than enough current then to spin this starter. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going now to put the end caps on, and then we'll test it again, and we'll keep adding bits to it once we've got the end caps on. If it tests positively and is running all right in the bearings, etc., then what we'll do is we'll put the planetary gear and housing on, and see if we get some output on the sprocket, the splines and the drive for the chain into the primary drive. So let me just put the end caps on this, and then I'll bring you back. Just 2 screws, so it should be pretty straightforward, but you just got to line them up properly. Okay, so we've got the end caps roughly in place. Starter motor feels a little tight, but let's see what happens. Right, lots of sparks. I think what I'm going to try and do here is just get this wire on the spade permanently, and then we'll just get all the sparks at the starter motor end, rather than welding this activation lead. Right, that's that on. So basically, all right, it's working, it's spinning. Let's see if we can hold it, because it's jumping around a little bit. Right. There we go. Mind you, it is draining the battery, my God, big time. And that lead, that small lead, is getting quite hot. But it is working, which is good. There we go, nice one. Right, keep that well out of the way for now. Next thing is to make sure this is tightened up. These two screws are tightened up properly. I didn't show you, but these 2 end caps slot in. They have to go in a particular position, but the one at this end has a groove in it to go around the end of the connection. Just testing this wire, actually, make sure it's not getting any hotter. Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. This end cap has a groove in it as a slot for the insulation on the live terminal, so that can only go one way round. The 2 screws go from this end, they're long screws that go all the way through, so you can only put this end cap on one way round, so that the screws locate into the 2 holes at this end, and then it's a case of just tightening up to make sure everything's lined up properly. Doesn't look quite right just yet. What I'm doing is trying to gauge it at the other end here. It doesn't look quite lined up properly to me. See if we can tap. With the old faithful rubber mallet. Not really is the answer. It's definitely not quite on properly at this end. It looks a bit skew whiff. Do this a bit more. Right, that's evened it out a little. Unless of course I've got it on the wrong way round. There are two screws, so the other end cap might be 180 degrees out. I hadn't noticed that. Let's have a look at it. Okay, that's them both undone. I'll try it the other way around. Oh, that's better. That's much better. Let's get the screw holes lined up. There. That fits. Assume we've got it lined up properly. Here we have. So the screws are going in. This cap's already fitted flush, so there's obviously one way around for it. Good job I checked. Make sure this is all still cold at this end. Yeah, it is, so we're alright. Do it too tight, but let's give it another test. Here we go, ready. Let's just hold it with the pliers. God, the apprehension when you do this is just bloody amazing. Oh yeah, spinning beautifully, and with overrun now, so that's a lot freer. And in fact, I'm turning it with my hand, which I couldn't do before. Right, let's get the Bendix, well, I should say planetary gears on, really. What I need to do first is, on the planetary gear shaft, output shaft, there's a circlip there that holds the splined sprocket. We'll just take the circlip off first, mount the planetary gears inside the housing, and then we can put the sprocket on the other side. I'll leave it running while we're doing that. So I've got circlip pliers. That's it, circlip off. This means planetary gears can go into the starter ring, which I've done, and they move quite freely, which is good. And then this whole housing goes onto the end of the starter with 3 screws. Now again, I'm not quite sure whether they need to be in a certain position. So we'll just keep rotating it, there we go, until we get a reasonable line up, and that's actually pushed on a little bit further in that position. And then we've got the 3 screws, and we'll just draw it in gently with a crosshead screwdriver. It's been drawn in quite nicely actually, not too much pressure at all on these. In fact, as you keep truing it up as we're going down, it loosens off actually, so that's nice. There we go. Right, planet gearbox in. Another test. Hold it with the pliers. Here we go. Locked. Yeah, this is a problem I've been having before. These planetary gears don't seem to fit very well, and that's because they're probably from a different unit, and therefore it's locking a little. So I'm going to take this apart, have a little bit think about it, and then I'll bring you back. However, let's in the meantime, we could have a play with another starter. Seeing as though we've got everything set up here, why don't we test some spares? Because making lots of sparks is fun. The look of this one actually. Don't hold out too much hope this one's going to work. Live terminal on this one doesn't feel too good actually. I'll soon find out. Yep, it works. Sparks flying, etc, etc, but let me just see if I can hold it with that screw. No, it doesn't work. Might be because that's not a very good contact. Just give that a quick turn. That's still on, that's still on. Doesn't work anymore. So it was because it was no. That might be a problem. That's just fallen off that terminal. Alright, well we'll stop playing and we'll get back to the job in hand. So I'll bring you back in a minute when I've got the Bendix gears, the planetary gears out of the starter motor we're going to use, and we'll take it from there. Right, what I've done then is I've taken the gearbox off with the planetary gears, wired it back up, and we'll check again and make sure she spins. Nothing wrong with that at all. Spinning like hell, lots of power, lots of torque, as you can see, so that's fine. So we just need to do a bit of measuring up and fitting. It's obviously too tight once it's installed. But what we'll do is I'll have one more go at fitting it, and we'll give it another test and see what happens with that. I'll bring you back in a sec. Right, I've just refitted the planetary gearbox, but just loosely, not all the way home, just fairly evenly, just to see if we can get it to spin. So hold on to your hats. Here comes some more sparks. Lots of sparks, but not turning. So this is just too tight. Okay, well, I think I'm going to leave it for now and have another think. But anyway, made progress in that we know the starter motor is good. We know now how to wire up the starter and the solenoid. We've got the correct leads to do that when we install this on the Fury. The only thing that I haven't worked out yet is how you normally mount up the solenoid and where that goes in the Fury, because it's pretty tight around the electrical mounting plate in there. So I don't know where the standard position was for that solenoid, because it's not shown in any of the documentation, or the parts book just shows it as a part separately to the bike. It doesn't show you where to fit it. But we'll find somewhere to do that. That's not a problem. It does have... Whoops. It does have a mounting plate on it. There it is, with 2 slots for mounting screws. So I might go and have a think about that now. But what we'll do, it's a Friday evening at the moment, Friday the 5th. We'll get a bit more time in the garage over the weekend, probably tomorrow. And we'll get back to the Fury engine itself, which is just by me here. And do a bit more on the gearbox, and maybe start thinking about beginning to fit up the primary drive as well. Now we've got the main shaft in. Obviously we've got the shaft then where we can start fitting the clutch and all the gubbins on the primary drive side. So plenty we can be getting on with. Made some progress. Thanks very much for watching, everybody, and see you again soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers. I'm back, and I didn't expect to be, and that's because I think we've just figured out what the problem is. So I dug out another spare starter, one that I actually used to swap parts from, and what I've found is that the end drive gear on it, on this other rotor, is different, and also has a shaft on it on the other side of the gear. And actually, if I offer up the planetary gear to this, that shaft goes in a hole in the planetary gear. The planetary gear slots on, and now it does turn on that rotor without turning the rotor, which it doesn't do on the unit that we've been testing, because it's different. It's got a different drive on it. So, of course, what we could do is just use this one and transfer over the right end caps, because that's not the right mounting end cap for Fury. However, the body on this one is pretty rough. and that's why I swapped items over to this one. But obviously I didn't swap the rotor, which is what I need to do now. So I'm going to do that over the next 15 minutes, and I'll bring you back and see if we have some success then in being able to spin the motor with the planetary gearbox all installed and intact. So live with me, I'll bring you back soon. Okay, starter back stripped down again in 2 minutes. Well, compare the two rotors now. This is the one that was in it that we were trying to get working, and this is the one I think that should be in it, and look how different that drive is. The gear diameter is smaller, and also we've got the spindle which the planetary gears sit on to centralize them as well. So I think that's what the problem was. So all this, although this one isn't in quite such good condition, needs a bit of cleaning up. We'll do that now, and we'll rebuild the starter with that one rather than that one. Okay, that's the starter motor built up then with the other rotor. The correct term isn't rotor, I just can't remember what it is off the top of my head for the central spindle on the motor. I'll have to look it up sometime, I've just forgotten. So let's give that a quick flash test just by touching. Yeah, it's working. So now let's just put on the planetary gears, planetary gearbox. Well, that's gone straight on, holes line up. Sorry if you can hear any fireworks going on in the background. I don't know what's going on. There's obviously a party somewhere. Right, get that drawn in gently. I've re-greased the bearings. Okay, oh, not quite on yet. That's not quite right. No, she's not pulled down. That's not right. She's not quite sitting right there, so that's not the right way around. We'll just need to rotate it 120 degrees. Try again. See if we can just get it lined up better. Whoopsie daisy. last one. See if we can get that to draw down a little bit better than it was. That's better. That's better. It's going in. There we go. It's now seated flush. Right. Moment of truth. So we're going to fit the terminal properly. Make sure we don't touch the end plate, lugs. Nice and tight. Okay. Negative side to solenoid activation to mimic the switch. Pliers to hold it. Fingers crossed. Action! Just let it run for a bit there, just to get it running. Just run the bearings in. Activation wire is a little warm, not getting too hot, so let's just give that another run. That's fantastic, there you go. So that should have given it enough just to get the bearings seated properly, and also that should just sort of polish up the commutator with the brushes too. Let's get this all unplugged here so we don't start shorting stuff out. There we go. Working starter motor. Fantastic. Progress. Right, just need to put the spline sprocket on the end. We'll tap that on. Don't need to tap it on even, hardly. Ooh, didn't like that. Didn't go all the way on. There she goes. That's better. Right, now we can put the circlip on the end, like so. And well, while we're here, got to give it another test then. Final test with everything together. That's the wrong terminal. That's the right terminal. Right, hold with the pliers. Here goes. Contact. It's quite good fun this, but it's working. There we are, all done. One thing people often ask is what's the what are the purposes of the planetary gears at this end, and that's to give the drive more torque to spin the engine. Technically, I don't know how it works, but it works, and that's all we need to know. But there we are, definitely done now. We've completed the job. We've got a working starter motor tested with the correct planetary gears, gearbox and drive to plumb into the sprag clutch which goes onto the primary drive. So we'll be able to refit this when we turn our attention to the primary drive. Right, that's definitely it for now. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. Hope that's been interesting, as for me anyway, and see you again soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers, everybody.